Hey, welcome back to One Dad's Bookshelf. My name is Luke Rosenberger, and I started this podcast to encourage people to read. I haven't always been a reader, but in my late 20s, I came to discover that as I read, it helps me to rise above the ordinary. And I want to encourage that for you as well. I was actually even just talking to someone today that they mentioned that there are so many books that they have, and they've only read the first couple of chapters and then they put it down. I'd encourage you to pick up a book and follow it all the way through. Now, I've got a bookshelf behind me, and there are plenty of books that I have up here that I have started, and I haven't made it all the way through. But there's a lot of books that I do make it all the way through. In my life, oftentimes what I'm doing is I am reading a book in my hand, and then I'm also reading a book, and some people may debate this with me, and you can tell me in the comment section if you think if this is reading or not. But I also do an audio book at the same time. I'm often in the car for 20, no, more than that, probably 30 to 40 minutes every single day, oftentimes by myself as I'm on my way to work and on my way home. And so I'm listening to a book, and I don't have an Audible. I don't pay for anything. What I do is I've got a local library. And if you've got a local library in your area, more than likely that you can take advantage of this as well. It's called the Libby app. They don't sponsor me, at least not yet. And I doubt they ever will, but I would encourage you to download the app, get a local library subscription, get books for free, listen to them on the go, because there is so much out there for you to grow from, to get an understanding about how to live this life and to live it well. And that's particularly what I want to do in encouraging in this podcast, is to find good books that encourage you to read. I'm not a guy that typically reads for entertainment. I'm nothing wrong with that. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. If you want to read a good novel all the time, that is probably a lot better for you than Netflix or YouTube, which ironically, this is what you're watching it on right now. But I encourage you to read. And I particularly want to read good books that challenge the mind and challenge the heart to live differently, to expand your horizons of what this life is all about. And so I want to encourage you to read. And the book that I'm going to be talking about today, this is what I'm going to be doing on primarily on my podcast from now on, is talking about books that I have read. And I want to talk about one book in particular today, and it's a book called Everybody Always by Bob Goff. This is a book, if you're not an avid reader, this is a book to start with. This is a very entry-level book. Not that the concepts are just shallow. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is it's a very easy book to follow along. He tells a lot of stories, and then he relates it to some more eternal principles along the way. I do think that you should read on occasion some books that make you think and stretches your mind, and it might take you a reading of a sentence one or two, or a paragraph one or two or three times to understand it. I think that we should read books like that occasionally because we want to stretch our mind. But a book like this is just fun to sit down as it brings you along, but it also challenges you in how you're living your life. Before I tell you just a little bit about this book, let me tell you a little bit about the author. The author is a guy by the name of Bob Goff, as I said. He lives in San Diego, California, for last that I understood. And he describes himself as a recovering lawyer. He's a guy that used to be in law, but from my understanding, he's no longer doing that, at least not on a everyday type of basis. He does a podcast himself. He is doing a lot of public speaking and connecting with people. And he is a guy that I would assume that I would love to spend some time around. Have you ever met people that are very charismatic, people that are filled with joy and filled with excitement and just bring an enjoyable flavor of life to every room that they enter into? I believe that Bob Goff is that type of guy. He's a guy he's a guy that, let me explain a story from last week that I heard, that hasn't lost his sense of wonder. Last week, I was at my church with a group of men, a large group of men. It was a fantastic event where John Tyson, a pastor from New York City, he came in, he spoke to the men of our church, and our pastor, Pastor Kyle Mercer, he got up there and asked a question during the Q&A, asked him to give an encouragement or what type of encouragement he would give to the older men of the group that are in the second half or the last third of their life. And what John responded with, I thought was rather profound. He said, "You men ought not to lose your sense of wonder." Oftentimes, we as men, we become cynical in our life. It's so easy for us to get angry or to get frustrated by something that's happened, not even recently, but it's happened 10, 20, 30 years ago, and for us to hold on to that with bitterness. John says, you got to be a person that doesn't lose their sense of wonder, that recognizes that, yes, we are made for the eternal, and we long for that day of being face to face and stripped of the sinfulness that this life has. But while we're here on this earth, God has created so many good gifts that are not ends in and of themselves, but that are worth being explored and are worth bringing all of our joy and all of our excitement and bringing all of our sense of wonder along with it. I say all of that because I believe that Bob Goff is that type of guy. He's a guy that has a sense of wonder to everything that he does. I would encourage you to pick up this book, as you'll discover that along the way. But one of the ways that he expresses that wonder and sense of joy is his encouragement to love the people around us with everything that we've got. As I said, this book is called Everybody Always, but the subtitle is Becoming Love in a World Full of Setbacks and Difficult People. It's so easy for us to lose that sense of love. And what he does throughout this book is he encourages you to become a person of love. That phrase, becoming love, that's an encouragement. That's a word, that's a phrase that he will say over and over and over again throughout this book, is that people who are becoming love are doing X, Y, and Z. And he gives, and this is what I want to do with just our time here in this episode, is I just want to point you to one chapter in particular. I kind of spun my wheels of how I'm going to bring this podcast together, what I'm actually going to talk about. And I don't know if I'm going to bring anything of value today because I've just kind of just been sitting here. How do I say this? How do I talk about it? What aspects of the book do I share? I thought I would just share one aspect of the book and one chapter in particular. His encouragement to become a person of love, and an encouragement that it doesn't necessarily have to be long and drawn out. It's taking the everyday opportunities that we have in just very, very, very small segments. And the chapter that I want to point your attention to is chapter 12, where the title is called 3 Minutes at a Time. Friendships can last a lifetime, but we make them 3 minutes at a time. And he opens by telling a story of going to the airport. Bob Goff is a guy that flies quite often. He doesn't like to stay in hotels. He doesn't like to be away from his wife, Maria, or as he calls her throughout the book, Sweet Maria. And so what he does on his business, oftentimes he'll get on the flight in the morning and then head out for the day, and then he'll fly back in the evening. And if you know anything about the airports, what's your first stop when you go to the airport? It's to the TSA. It's that you got to stand in that long line. And when you're flying out early in the morning, you are right alongside of a long line of people who are not excited to be up in the morning, not excited to be going through security. And Bob saw this as an opportunity. Sometimes we think that building relationships, it's got to be something that we're like, I got to carve out, I got to carve out an hour. I got to carve out 2 hours every single day or every single week so that I can set it aside to pursue somebody with some type of intention. Bob saw it differently in this particular situation. He said, there's a guy here that I'm going to see every single day. And for a while, he wasn't necessarily talking to him every single day, but it was like, all right, I'm missing out on an opportunity to love this person genuinely. And so he started off, he's like, I'm going to be in line. I'm going to see this same TSA agent. I'm going to seek to develop a relationship with him. And his man's name was Adrian. And he did develop a relationship with him. It then, as he saw him day after day and just honestly, as I said, loved him 3 minutes at a time, he developed a closer relationship and a longer relationship that extended not to just this one man. It then eventually extended into his family that was in the area, but also family that lived out of the country. He developed a long-lasting relationship that had impact in that family and beyond. And so, I don't know, I was just kind of flipping through the book real quick, seeing if there's anything that I would pull out from this particular chapter. I don't think that there is. I should have probably highlighted a little bit of this. But I guess that's all I really say. I won't really go that much more into detail even on this particular book, but I would encourage you to read it. It is Bob Goff encourages you to love people and to love them well. He tells a lot of different stories. He talks about a lot of different circumstances with his wife and with his kids and with his neighbors. But it gives me the encouragement to be a person that loves. And when you think about this, loving people 3 minutes at a time, I think about how am I going to reach the people around me? I've got to be more intentional about it. I've got to take the opportunities that when my neighbors are outside, I say hello, that I go beyond just the simplicities of like, well, let me just get out of my car and get back inside to my own house. How can I pursue them to a greater degree so that they know that I actually love them, that I actually care about them, and that I am making a difference, not for my own sake, but for their sake and for the kingdom of God. I don't know if I'm really bringing a whole lot of depth to this particular episode, but I do believe that this is a good book. I loved it. It's a book that I've read now a couple of times, and I encourage it to you. So what's the books that are on your bookshelf right now that aren't just sitting there? What's a book that you're reading? I know there's a couple of more books that I'm going to be talking about in the near future. There's a couple of books that I'm working through. I am always working through at least 2 books at a time. Sometimes it's I usually have a book in my hand and also have an audio book that I'm listening to in my car. And so, what are the books that you have going on? I would love to hear about that. And I will catch you next time on One Dad's Bookshelf. All right, we'll see you later.